colleague, Tim Keanini, more universally known as TK, who is the Chief Technology Officer for nCircle, to address that question in our remaining time. And in his presentation, TK is going to discuss the differences in motivation and intent for the three different kinds of attackers. And you know, I've got some other notes on what you're going to say, but I think I'd rather just turn the podium over to you and let you say it.
All right, hi. My name's Tim Keanini. Last name is Hawaiian, just in case you're thinking, what the heck is Keanini? I grew up on Hawaii, and I'm probably the only Hawaiian in the room right now that is going to be talking about, oh, look out now. Oh, right on, right on. This is a new one for me. All right, break out your surfboards. It's an interesting topic. A little bit of my background, just so that you can kind of frame this in context. I never thought I'd be doing what I do now. Okay, so I grew up in Hawaii, and I thought I was just going to stay there. I played music. That's how I made a living. And so, like all musicians, I wanted to go to the mainland and do music. Got here and pretty much starved. So then I figured out, hey, you know, I can play the computer pretty well. So I played the computer, and I did games. I got deeply involved in computer games in the early stages. And there's a way that gamers think, there's a way that they frame the universe, and particularly there's a way that they frame conflict that I think is going to be useful to think about when you talk about bad guys and categorize them. So I'll share with you a little bit of that. And then, of course, I don't know, if you started out in gaming early enough, pre-internet, you basically were, the security crowd and the gamer crowd were the same crowd. I mean, we basically had to break copy protection to put it on the BBS so people would dial in. Wow, super exciting. I got really excited when the modem lights blinked, but that's a different story. Okay, so let's get on with this talk. Advanced persistent threat. I mean, it gives some people a rash when they hear it, but let's just talk about what it is historically. A lot of my work with the Secret Service early in sort of electronic crimes, they had actually a very good term that I used to use a lot, which was structured versus unstructured threat. And at the time, the unstructured threat that everybody was fooling around with in IT was a very machine-to-machine type of relationship. Bad guy or just enthusiast, really, would write something to go walk through somebody's network or maybe even the entire internet aimed at a machine. And then you would have defenses that were mechanical and machine-oriented. And really, nobody thought about real bad guys, real humans thinking, going after real human assets. And that's really how things have changed. The whole structured threat has a different profile. The profile being very sophisticated, talented people writing very custom things, very targeted at you for a particular purpose. These people are patient. They aren't about smash and grab. They will exist in your network. They may be there already. And their plan actually is well laid out. And they're calculating every day, actually, what they are going to do and how they're doing. In fact, they're patching bugs in their software and that reside inside of your computers. So a very different threat than the noisiness of something like Code Red or things of the past. They desire to persist. That's another thing too, is their whole intention is to kind of get this real parasitic relationship with a machine. And it could be anybody's machine. Like, my auntie in Hawaii, she's like, I don't have anything to steal. I know, but you don't want to be like 5,099 on the botnet circle here, and your computer is going to be attacking, some denial of service thing. And it's all bad, and they just don't understand it. Like everybody doesn't understand they're a tenant in this giant apartment building called the internet. So this is you, right? And I'm going to frame again. I think it's useful or actionable to not just say bad guys in one big category or bad things in one big category. In sort of a game way, let's frame it so that we can understand sort of motivation, payoff, what they want from you. Maybe you're unfortunate enough to actually be a target for all three. Maybe not, but let's talk about it. So organized crime. They're out to make money. Until the money dries up, they're not going to go away, right? This is a business for them. They constantly evolve. In fact, they've just learned how to use IT. So these are the same guys that existed before the internet, and some of them carry guns, but now they have compilers, and they're getting good, right? Their motivation, straight up money. I mean, they got to figure out how to monetize this stuff. And the silly thing is they're so effective right now that really they are slowing down their penetration because they can't monetize all the stuff they already have fast enough. They actually have an IT problem just like you. Try managing 600,000 breached machines, right? And there's actually other malware trying to actually get in there. So they get in there and like bump everybody out like an antivirus and install themselves. Hacktivists, they're noisy actually. And the one good thing about hacktivists is if you are playing the numbers game, be careful because they're noisy and always visible. So their numbers are always going to exceed, let's say, organized crime. Organized crime doesn't want to be heard. They don't want to make the news. So like while the counts for hacktivists may go through the roof, yeah, everything they do is freaking visible. That's their job, right? They want to make the news. They have to be grand. If it's not grand, so what, right? If they actually knock over a tire store down the street, it's not going to be on CNN. Nation state. Yeah. So, this is a spy versus spy thing. I mean, it's motivated by what these people do, and they're damn good. We saw a Skywiper, aka Flamer. People are counting. To me, they're counting the wrong thing. They're saying, they went after 300 machines or whatever. That's not big. What if it's the right 300 machines? I mean, good job, guys. That's what you want to do. The number that actually should shock everybody is the damn thing went undetected for 5 to 6 years. I mean, that's the bigness of this thing. They did a damn good job. And when you look at that code, you're thinking, shh, this is like, 5 years? I mean, that would be like Office 11 already. You know what I mean? You got 5 years to develop. I can't tell you what version of Office I was running in 5 years ago, but this is software that's absolutely maintained and well designed. And frankly, they didn't even know the features they'd need 6 years out. So they had to put in mechanisms to maintain that. So here's a table to help you think about kind of where you sit and the game you're playing with these guys, because frankly, they've already dealt you in. It's not like you can say, oh, I'm not playing. You are. So, here, let's take organized crime. They're into making money. If they can make money with whatever they have stolen from you, then, of course, that's going to be a target. You're going to have to prioritize your controls around that. And, incredible software there. I mean, the Zeus family of malware is crazy good. People really don't know that they're using a browser. It looks like it's a really good SSL tunnel to your bank. And frankly, they get just between the screen and that SSL tunnel. And in fact, they'll even modify the balance. So my advice to you, if you're doing online banking, do yourself a favor and log in from another device too. Because the cost of them getting malware in between on your PC, on your tablet, on your phone, is not going to happen, right? So at least you have multiple ways of auditing that. Just a little piece of advice. But again, this table is to help you frame not just all bad things, but the game in which these actors are playing with you and where you are oriented to that. So this is another thing I think everybody should understand is the motivation objective is likely to remain the same over the years. Their tactics are going to change. I mean, I can't, if I produce Microsoft Word, I can't tell you how many different people are going to use it for different purposes. And it's likely to change as a technology, but the writer is going to stay the writer. The tech doc guy is going to stay the tech doc guys. So there's a thing, when a lot of people talk about some of the simple aspects of game theory, they reference Colonel John Boyd, who presented this thing called the OODA loop. And it's simply a way to simplify conflict. and how to frame conflict into deciding whether you have a dominant or a inferior strategy. I'll take you a little bit through that, and we can talk about it. It's actually been misused in IT security, which is a real pet peeve for me because, for reasons I'll explain. So the OODA loop's very simple. It basically has 4 phases. There's a observation phase, an orientation phase, a decision phase, and an action phase. And this is the acronym OODA. So there actually are 2 halves, too. There's an intelligence phase where you're doing all of your observation and orientation to whatever your sense organs can gather. And it may be multi-sensors, it may be your eyes and ears, whatever it is. And then there's an execution phase, which is, you have enough information, sufficient enough to make a decision, you make a call, you do something, and then around the loop you go, okay? Well, it turns out that, continuous monitoring, for instance, you can really think about it as being biased towards the observation and intelligence side of things. And I just want to point that out because, again, you don't want to be unbalanced. I mean, frankly, you just don't want to live in the 2 O's and never do anything. I mean, this is a loop. It's got to ring through. So let's take conflict, okay? So let's say there's a red team and a blue team. Red team, let's say, takes an action on the blue team in conflict. Of course, that's observed because they were acted upon. They take it in, they orient, what the hell happened, what can we do, we make a decision, blue team takes an action on. And the whole thing that Boyd was conveying with this mental model was he essentially wanted to say that if you could spin your OODA loop faster then the sort of the observation side of your attacker, you could get inside their OODA loop. You could basically twirl this at a higher RPM and really disorient these people. Now, here's the problem. IT is really like a prey species. I mean, the Bank of America just doesn't have the offensive measures to go after the hacktivists. It's not their job. They're not into catching crooks. Frankly, it's all about business continuity. Most of the instrumentation you put into place that you get even from vendors, there's not really an offensive. Now, there may be some people here that have the offensive capability. I totally respect that. You are not the norm, okay? I mean, you just can't fire back with your router. It's not going to happen, right? So the prey species, though, although I will say in nature, they do have a strategy, okay? So my whole talk at RSA a couple years back was the fact that IT never has an offensive measure. So you really can't act upon your adversary. So the whole OODA thing in this context kind of fails. But there is a way to do it, and that is actually something that looks more like this, which is you fictitiously turn an adversary on yourself. Okay, so that you can actually spin your OODA loop fast enough. That's really the trick. You have to spin it fast enough and outside the perceptive boundaries of your adversary. It has the same effect. Okay, so the idea is if you can bring change to yourself faster than the observation barriers of your adversary, they completely stay disoriented. This is exactly how prey species survive. And frankly, they survive at the species level, not at the organism level. They may be lost at the organism level, but that's a whole different talk. Okay, so I'm going to proceed down this path. So continuous monitoring, actually, you would think about it as just, oh, I'm just watching myself or whatever, but it's actually about change. Okay, and the thing that you have to really think about is, am I changing fast enough? Because if you're not, you're essentially that slow thing in the herd, and you're basically food on the prairie at this point, right? If you, like, in sort of this predator-prey theory, right, that lion that's actually, chilling out in the shade, he's conserving energy. That's his job, okay? He makes a cost-benefit decision. If there's some gazelle that he's going to spend, like, a good 200 calories chasing, and the thing's worth maybe $1.50 in calories, he's not going to get out of the shade, right? That's the way it works. So the idea is you have to make yourself not so feasible to these threats, and there's a way to do that. The idea, At 2008 RSA, I presented this concept of a knowledge margin. And it's simply this, which is, if a target system can cause the adversary to constantly have to recompute their tactics and cause uncertainty on the adversary's causal model. They have a causal model, okay? If they do X, they expect you to do Y. They can achieve this knowledge margin. And this is the closest thing we have to achieving an equilibrium with the hostile environment. We're never going to win. They're going to be there. You probably always have something they want. So you just have to make it kind of not so cost-benefit for them. So what it would look like, let's take, a cloud environment, for instance, and let's use cloud actually for what it's probably good for, not just to resemble what the old data center looked like. Let's say that you have a box, and let's say it's configured to a state we'll just call orange. And through some automation, you check it out. It's totally good. It's, meets your baseline. Maybe there's a few vulns, but there's some mitigation there, compensating control. It's fine, right? It's what you accept. And let's say, you basically deploy. You're in production. There's, hundreds of these now. You check it again, checks out good. You check it again, checks out good. Let's say this is, checking every hour, right? You check it again, oh, bad thing, right? Okay, time to evolve, right? We go to the next generation, we change stuff, we put it in place. Again, we walk this thing, yep, looks good. This is a different generation of species. Again, we're evolving. Let's say here, for instance, we look at it and it checks out good, but let's say some perishable date. Let's say that every 24 hours, you want to actually modify your infrastructure just a little bit, right? I know that may scare the shit out of some people here. Because you're like, whoa, dude, my IT costs. Okay. We'll average that over the year, and we'll figure out how big a mop you have when they walk through your network. Okay, so let's say you change, right? You change and you evolve. You got a new species now. It goes up. Now, the whole idea here is I'm just giving you an example because in this sort of 3 generations of change, in normal networks, or at least in best practice, they tell you, oh, wow, you'll be great if this took you a year to do. I'm talking about bringing this change to your network like on a daily basis. I mean, you totally can do it now with things being virtualized. And the idea is you evolve faster than what your adversary can map. I mean, they basically tell me, all these bad guys, I mean, if they do get into your network, or while they're trying to get into your network, they couldn't map your entire network in an entire day. I mean, if they can, then you just got to get faster. And this is the rhythm of the dance, if you will. So yeah, they're disoriented, right? They can't figure it out. All right. So observation orientation increases your perceptive boundaries. Now, what I'm talking about here is. This is like one of those things that, what's the sound of a tree falling in the forest or whatever that Zen thing is. If you're not looking at this thing at a particular sampling rate, let's use a, kind of a signal theory type of analogy, and it's changing. I mean, frankly, it's a race between whether you can take advantage of that change or your adversary, or, one or the other. I mean, God help you if your adversaries have a better sampling rate on your infrastructure than you do. Sampling rate of the observation orientation is sort of relative to change. I mean, if you took a wild guess, you say, well, my network changes. I guarantee you, it changes every week. Does it change every day? I don't know. But if you took a picture of it. And some of you may be saying, well, I got lots of machines, son. I mean, there's no way you're going to take a picture of my entire network. That's what automation's for. I mean, this is old school. It's been happening for many years. We have customers that literally have hundreds upon hundreds of thousands of machines. And they're literally, going and getting a snapshot of that every day. And they trend this thing over time. All right. And again, you're just trying to get your OO section of the OODA loop faster than your adversary. So your decisions and actions should basically drive the rate of change for yourself. Again, you're not going to be able to act on your adversary. So that's again, I think, a misinterpretation or a not so useful interpretation for most of the OODA loop. So your rate of change should be beyond the perceptive boundaries of your adversary. Now, here's the interesting thing, okay? If you start to raise the cost of how your adversary acquires knowledge, they basically have two choices. One, they can go attack somebody else, which is, you know, that joke about just got to run faster than your friend, not the bear. The other thing there is you actually may be the one the bear wants, okay? That's a reality, okay? You are so good to this person. So in this case, what they have to do is they have to now make a cost-benefit call, because as you raise the cost of their observation and orientation, they have to become more exposed. The whole reason why Skywiper didn't get found for, 5-6 years is frankly, it was too easy for them to go undetected, right? So you need to raise their costs. Now, as they become more exposed, a lot of their work gets, extinguished. They don't have all this equity and all this stuff they installed in your network, or, all that stuff gets washed away. I mean, frankly, if you built furniture, particularly outdoor furniture, the way you build internet servers, people would be putting these like leather couches on their porch. Like, that's stupid. The stuff that goes into hostile environments, you got to be able to hose off, okay? Because it's ugly out there. There's birds pooping on it. And so think of your server infrastructure that way. I mean, it is hostile out there, and there's going to be bad guys pooping on it, okay? You don't want that. All right. So summary. Here's the brain dead thing, right? A persistent threat requires a persistent defense. That's all I'm telling you guys, is you just got to think about your defenses a little differently. Frankly, your opponent has changed their mindset drastically over the past 5 years. And, it's time we kind of take an evolutionary step. Establish what your continuous monitoring sampling rate will be. Just decide. Frankly, if you're taking snapshots every day and you see there's no change, maybe you can go to every other day. Maybe nothing happens on your network. I don't know. Maybe parts of your network. But just figure it out. Like, figure out what that sampling rate is so that you can represent and model the change that's taking place on your network, so that your observation and orientation are true to what's going on. Again, through automation, it's the only way. I mean, networks are too complicated and too big, frankly, to do it manually. I mean, I can't even manage my laptop manually at this point. I mean, my iPhone comes up and I got 35 updates. Are you kidding me? Like, I don't even have time or bandwidth to do that. And we now, as individuals, have tablets, phones, PCs, all of these things, all these passwords, everything, just figure out how you become friends with some kind of machine or some kind of automation to augment your abilities. So let's see where we're on time. I got probably 5 minutes. Take some questions, some criticism. I don't know. Like my hairstyle. Want to talk about Hawaii? Let's go.
Talk about Hawaii. That's on.
The only question I have is, can you give some examples of change?
Some examples of that change? Yeah.
Anything I can think of just isn't practical.
Yeah,
And a lot of the change that, in a security sense, is reactionary. Mm-hmm. So I'm just curious as to what kind of changes you can implement.
Yeah. Actually, so here's the interesting thing. Virtual infrastructure, this thing we call cloud, I mean, it's been around for a while. And in fact, nCircle could not even exist if we weren't an early adopter of automation. I mean, essentially, we have to actually stand up a patch server and a not patch server, a server with this vulnerability of this version, a not patch server. So for every condition we have to stand up a target that basically is X or Y, state. Okay, now nobody's fooling around with CD-ROMs, re-imaging boxes, I can tell you that much, okay? Everything's automated. So I've seen a lot of this stuff actually happen in software development faster than in production. Why? Well, because there is a sort of a best practice in IT ops that actually isn't about change. It frankly is about not changing and being more homogeneous. Why don't we just all line up our heads for one, sniper shot? I mean, it's not like this defense in depth thing, right? I don't care how many people's deep that is. I need diversity. And that's what I'm talking about here. We want defense in diversity. It's diversity that frankly makes the bad guy's job a lot harder. So I, as you can see, I take issue to some of the ITIL best practices and stuff, because some of it I look at and I'm like, oh, are you really trying to make it easier for these people or what? Like, whose side are you on? All right, let's see, what else can we talk about? We have a few minutes. I live in Austin, by the way. Not that matters, but it may explain my coffee consumption and love for good music. Take your hangover medicine now.
Hi, okay. For any changes to most network infrastructures that a lot of us deal with, you need to go through change control boards. You need to get approvals. A lot of these are national critical infrastructure high systems, and you're suggesting we change these every day?
I'm totally starting to
if I get it
itch.
changed,
Yeah.
when I need it every week or month, if I'm lucky.
Yeah, I know. I feel you. I feel your pain. That change review board needs to understand what this threat is like. I mean, I'm sorry. I don't have a good answer for you because I know that reality quite well. And there's no real good answer unless, you can really get around that. Now, if you think of building infrastructure to make the change process more efficient, and you can show, essentially that you have the technology, maybe a great metric, actually, to publish on a daily basis is all the machines in your network, what is its basically time to repair? The mean time to repair for any box on your network. Let's run the scenario. This box gets shot in the head. It's got malware on it. Somebody's got to show up with a big mop and take it back to a healthy state. How many hours is that, right? And maybe over time, you can get the change review board to monitor that. Maybe it's actually the slow one in the herd is the one that takes like 8 days. Nobody wants to touch that. And believe me, your change review board is like, oh, don't even go next to that server. Because if you just touch its keyboard, it may fall over. And it's running some critical function, whatever. If you can get all the critical functions to boxes that basically can be like that stainless steel couch, not so comfortable maybe, but the idea that you can hose this thing down, get it back to a really good state in an hour, I think that whole process around change may turn, I don't know. I'm making shit up at this point.
That's a great platform to ask a question.
Yeah, go ahead, bring it, I'm ready.
Well, mine sort of goes along the same lines. I work in the DoD community, and we're being forced into common security tools.
Yeah.
And it sort of sounds counterintuitive to what you're talking about, in that we're now all using the same tool with all the same capabilities and vulnerabilities, and there's no real diversity out there anymore. So
I know.
what do you think about that as far as DoD and I guess even Fed governments going to it?
Yeah, I mean, the sickness or the toxicity is this concept of operational efficiency. Unfortunately, everybody strives for it in theory, and I'm good with it. I mean, if nature was that way, there would be all these species falling off the face of the earth. I mean, it just would. And it does. But the strong ones survive. And the thing you learn in that whole biomimicry thing is when you look at prey species and you see how they they survive in some pretty hostile environments, you can see a lot of loss, actually. And it looks like you're losing the war, but you're not. Loss is all about change. And change brings, new generations of species. The change may be, these people need to get the hell out of the organization. I don't know, but I mean, the change is going to happen one way or the other, dude. Because, at the point that this thing walks through your network, it's like, oh, now whose fault was that? And And it's going to happen because I'll tell you, the dudes in Russia and China, I don't think they have a change review board. Like, I'm dead serious. These guys are. Yeah, I'm out.
I think TK's going
I'm
to
catching
get
a
some
plane.
of the highest reviews.
right.
Just one man's predict. Last question.
Yeah.
Right here.
Talked about change at a very high level.
Yep.
We're talking about change across the network and enterprise, what have you. Can you give us some specifics? Like, are you changing IP addresses? Or are you going to be changing what?
Yeah.
Router scripts? Or the locations of machines? Or what changes are you making?
Awesome question. Okay, so I'll give you a good example of probably the most resilient infrastructure that exists in the planet right now, and how it parallels species and organism. You look at DNS infrastructure. If you consider that the organism is in fact the CPU architecture, it actually may be the actual operating system. These are low-level things at the organism level. But at species level, there's a protocol called DNS and bind, and essentially that whole thing exists at the species level. Now, when you look at the infrastructure that runs just under the top level root name servers, there's a lot of diversity there, but no one would know. Frankly, every time you resolve www.yahoo.com, it comes back the same way, right? And even if you go and try and figure out how to take part of it down, when that thing actually goes down, and it may be susceptible to a single attack, but I got to tell you, man, if I was a bad guy, and frankly, I had to have 9 different attacks well coordinated at a certain time, that's a high cost to me. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of diversity. Now, you can get the same type of effect when you're building, let's say, web server farms. And you may have actually different operating systems, or you may even have different versions of Apache, running on the background. But that load balancer that's in the front is serving it up, really well, actually, at the species level, right? That service is pristine. And frankly, you can be rolling out servers and doing whatever the hell you want on the background, but as you face the actual, customer of that service, everything's as nice and clean, and basically they can't even see the diversity from that level. No, I'm saying there are examples out there where you could change, for instance, okay. You could change things. You have to find where the abstraction exists, okay? For instance, in IPv6, whether you like it or not, that 128-bit address, since it's plug and play, you could change that on the fly. In fact, nobody in this room is going to remember 128-bit address, so we shouldn't even be talking about it. And that actually is random. And frankly, them actually coming to that space targeted exactly at that IP would be next to impossible, So, but the DNS name stays the same, right? And I'm talking about things, you can get that level of abstraction in architecture, I'm talking like CPU architecture. You can get it in, you can even mess with ports, frankly. I mean, frankly, there's enough NAT infrastructure right now where you could be changing ports as long as you maintain the table of translation. I mean, there's all things that you can. Right now, when you get let's say, a OVF file, a virtual file, you can specify so much and parameterize so much of the runtime for any type of machine before you put it on the network that you could literally mechanize some flux in some of those parameters. So every time you instantiate the machine, it would be a little bit different. That would be so hard for you to actually be changing malware there so that it would sense those differences. All right, we're good? All right, thank you.
I think TK is the first person that could make people laugh talking about advanced persistent threats. So thank you very much for your presentation, Karen.